The English were once called a nation of shopkeepers, but today that mantle has fallen on India. It's truly a nation not just of shopkeepers, but of entrepreneurs of every kind, and perhaps call centers too. It's partly because India is now a huge country of 1.1 billion people, the world's largest democracy, and set with China within the next 50 years to become one of the world's 2 wealthiest nations. Yet more than 300 million people in India live on less than $1 a day, with 500 million others earning less than $2. About half the female population are illiterate, and its level of HIV infection is the 2nd largest in the world. It is a country of extraordinary contrasts and conundrums, and there are some important unanswered questions. For instance, how is it, with all its newfound riches, India's gap between rich and poor appears to widen every day? How is it that a system of thought nearly 3,000 years old continues its stranglehold of poverty and apartheid-like persecution over India's 700 million lower castes, and of those, the 250 million Dalits in particular? Well, it's changing. India's new beginnings are of course reflected in its extraordinary industrial growth rates. Like the $9 billion Tata Group, India's major player, with 80 major companies and operations in every international market, with a portfolio of car manufacturing, tea, software, energy and hospitality. That's one side of India's story, the one understandably its government celebrates. But is there a new deal for the poor, the hungry and the homeless? The ones who knock on car windows at the traffic lights in Hyderabad or Mumbai, or those who sit hopeless and helpless at the wayside and have no other choice but to beg for a few rupees to keep themselves alive. Despite India's endemic poverty and all the problems of caste and the system of social engineering it represents, in the new India there is evidence of new beginnings, even for the poorest of the poor. As Manoman Singh has bravely said, untouchability is a disgrace in the modern world, a blot on humanity. Nonetheless, in the 60 years since independence, India's leaders have failed to address this genuinely disgraceful situation. Yet recently, an Indian NGO known as OMCC, the Operation Mercy Charitable Company, has begun a program of education, training and empowerment for the very poor, which heralds hope and opportunity for India's Dalits. It's certainly early days, and India's Dalits have suffered deeply for an extraordinary 3,000 years. So ingrained has been the prejudice and discrimination against them. Even at India's independence 60 years ago, this kind of progress would hardly have seemed possible. Yet with a rising international awareness of Dalit human rights, there is undoubtedly a new beginning. The big question is, will it take hold across the nation? And will it last? Kancharai Laya is Professor of Political Science at Osmania University and one of India's leading intellectuals. He is a foremost critic of caste and internationally one of the most persuasive voices in the call for justice and transformation for the Dalit people. We asked Professor Ilaya to explain the origins of the caste system and his own view about the possibilities for liberation for Dalits today.
It started with writing of the early Hindu scripture called Rig Veda, in which the scriptural Hindu book declared that God did not create these people. God created the priest from his head, the rulers from his shoulders, the business caste from his thighs called Vaishyas, and the Sudras from the feet of God. But the untouchables were not created. As a result, these untouchables started living outside the villages. If somebody touches them, they would go and bathe immediately. So their life was made miserable. Now, the process of giving Dalit children English medium education. Now, if this language is given to Dalits and tribals, the backward communities, over a period of, let us say, 20 to 30 years from now on, they too can think of entering into the ruling realms. This is one of the main issues that makes the Brahmins, the upper caste, and the ruling caste of India very, very angry and upset. They think that if Dalits learn English, they can also begin to rule this country. Now, the caste system actually was created through a process of spiritual slavery. They said God created you to serve the upper caste, to remain the slaves of the Brahmins, the Banyas, and the upper caste. Now, the spiritual liberation is the one which believes that God created all human beings equal. You will have the right to change in this life and in the life hereafter. Now, this message is shaking the Hindu communities. This message is going to change the very spiritual life of people in this country. Now, therefore, the Hindu fundamentalists are angry with this. Therefore, the attacks are taking place all over India. But nonetheless, the message is out. English education schools are spreading across the country. This country needs a spiritual liberation because for thousands of years, Dalits, the tribals, the backwards, were not allowed to read and write. They were not allowed to be equal with one another. So all kinds of spiritual barriers were set between people. Now those spiritual barriers are being broken through the means of English medium education, equal education for all. And this makes a Dalit a global citizen. This makes the tribal a global citizen. This makes OBC a global citizen.
The value of English to Dalit emancipation was recognized as far back as the 15th century. Yet for centuries, Dalit educational opportunities were extremely limited, most being denied any kind of education. Yet for those who have received such help, its value has been outstanding. And today, as we've already seen, English medium education is beginning to have a transformatory effect, now in significant numbers, upon young Dalit people.
My name is Albert Lyle. I'm the National Director for Operation Mercy India. And Operation Mercy India is also known as OMCC. We run Dalit education centers across the country and various other economic development initiatives, health initiatives, and the advocacy work. Well, the more importantly, I'm very glad because I am the emancipated Dalit. I want to tell you my story, how this emancipation took in my own family. 80 years back, my father was a poor, unfortunate Dalit boy living in one of the poor villages of this country. 80 years back, missionaries from Mennonite Brethren Church from Canada happened to come to my village, and they looked at my father. They took him from that village and they put him in their own boarding school and given him the proper education. I know that resulted in complete change in my family. Today, we are altogether different. I have 4 sisters and 1 brother. All of us in the family are highly educated and we have good jobs and our social status is improved. This is what a small kindness that was shown by the missionaries had a great impact in my family. This is one of the reasons why I'm a strong proponent of Dalit education centers. 13,500 children with us now, and more children will be joining. Each of these children will have this great story to tell.
There seems little doubt about the value of education upon the Dalit community. And in years to come, the returns on this overdue people investment will become powerfully evident. As children of the villages migrate upwards and become graduates, they will earn their rightful place in India's expanding economy. But what about present needs? The need, for instance, for what's now called the empowerment of women. It is said that if you are a Dalit and a woman, you are twice oppressed. Yet a landmark initiative known as the Lydia Project is drawing women away from their slavery and serfdom and giving them skills, self-respect, and a previously unheard of ability to earn money for themselves and for their families. It's early days, but the initiative is already bearing fruit.
When I came to India 3 years ago, I really didn't know what I was going to do. But when I came, I started working for this company, Lydia, which is part of OMCC, and it is for the cause of women. We work with illiterate, uneducated, less educated, or just really struggling women. We train them in all kinds of skills for tailoring, sewing, embroidery, anything that will give them a way to make an income for themselves and for their families. So right now what we're doing is we're developing businesses and products and items for the women to create, to make, and to sell for income for themselves and to support the projects and all the vocational schools that we're opening in India right now. There's many different things we're trying to do. We are experimenting all the time and exploring different ways to help this program develop and for the women to really find a place in it to do their own thing. So now we're going to go inside and meet the women. Mary came here about a year ago. She had a baby a few months ago. Now she's back so that she can have an income to take care of her baby. This is Mina. She's one of the ladies that's been working with us for almost 2 years now. She's one of our fully trained teachers and workers, and she's going to tell you her story in Telugu.
నా పేరు మీనా. నేను 15 ఇయర్స్లో ఉన్నప్పుడు వచ్చాను. మా మమ్మీ డాడీ వాళ్ళు నేను చేసుకుంటే పెళ్లి చేసుకోలేకపోతే ఫ్యాషన్ డిజైనింగ్ కోర్స్ చేయాలి అని అన్నారు. నాకు ఫ్యాషన్ డిజైనింగ్ నేర్చుకోవాలని ఉంది. ఇక్కడ స్టిచ్చింగ్ అన్నీ చేస్తూ చదువుకోవాలని ఉంది. నాకు ఇక్కడ ఉండాలంటే ఇష్టం.
These are uniforms that we are now making for Good Shepherd School. What we started doing was making the uniforms because we were already hiring out people to make the uniforms for all the children. So after they're done training, we have now started training the women to make the school uniforms so that we can employ them, and they are now making income making these uniforms. We started the tailoring schools in these very, very poor slums that are called gypsy slums, where they move around all the time. They live in the thatch huts and they have nothing. So they asked if we could train them. We went in and trained them, and now we are now employing them also so they have an income going. We train them to handle their money. We give them loans so they can get machines, and now we are now starting to employ them. That's what Lydia's trying to do. We've got the uniforms going for the first graduates, and then as they learn this, then we step them up into the higher end things like the silk jackets. The vision is to give them a complete training and employment when we're done with them. Okay, I'm going to show some of the collection we have, some of the things that we are making at this time. These are silk jackets that we make from saris. Now the women that we hire outside of here, we help them buy machines. We give them loans with like a 1% interest rate. They pay back to Lydia so that we can again loan out to other women to buy machines, and we buy them the normal treadle machines with a motor, so if they have electricity they can use it, but if they don't then they can still sew at home.
For most people, the sound of the dentist's drill is none too pleasant, but for 250 million Dalits, it's a luxury they've rarely experienced. Not that is, until the OMCC stepped in. Their approach to the emancipation of the Dalit population has meant a revolution not only in education, but in medical care, including dental surgery. OMCC clinics are seen as an essential part of the whole life provision, which comes with the planting of schools and empowerment in each Dalit community.
This is the entrance of the Good Shepherd Clinic. This is a primary care clinic, and we offer primary care facilities, namely we see expectant mothers and we see small children. We also offer minor surgery facilities. We have a surgeon that visits us once a week. We also have dental services. If you're not aware, the dental care is actually a luxury to all people living below poverty line, and we are able to offer that to our patients. We also treat minor ailments, people with back pain, cough and cold, diarrhea. That's also offered at our clinic. We have 5 clinics over the country, and I do travel there quite frequently. I think the community health program that we have initiated over the last 8 months has been a great achievement. We have 30 community health worker programs around the country, some in very rural areas. I just came back from a trip to Rajasthan, where our health worker is the only medical person in an 80-kilometer radius, and she does everything from deliveries to looking after those who have had strokes, requiring urinary catheterization, rehydration, starting IV lines, giving antibiotics. So she is the doctor in that place, and we're very proud of her. So my dream is that one day healthcare in our country will be universally available to everyone, and the kind of healthcare that I would receive if I were to fall sick would be the same healthcare that the Dalit person who lives on the road with below poverty line would be able to receive, and that should be how it is for everyone. That's what universal healthcare is about.
I am a general practitioner working here, but I cover most of the fields like general medicine, general surgery, and gynec and obstetrics, ENT and skin and VD, and to certain extent pediatry. Here, most of the people are below poverty line. Most of the people, labor people, and below poverty line, they are not able to provide for the medicines. They were not able to pay for the medicines, and they can't go to a private clinic, especially in a city like this. Big hospitals with heavy charges, and our people cannot go there. So the only hospital available for them is the OM hospital, OM clinic now. It is going to be converted into hospital for rendering them more services, even including admissions, operations, and so on and so forth. It's a must that some organization must come forward and help them. And our OM organization is coming forward and helping them wonderfully.
What is striking about the OMCC is its work is significantly different from other NGOs and charitable bodies. The difference is most obviously seen in its whole-person vision for care and development. This model is not just to give aid, though practical compassion is a priority, but the vision is for the whole person, body, mind, and spirit. Since the community is the place of belonging, OMCC works for Dalit opportunities in India as a whole. According to OMCC thinking, justice and human rights are just as important as other priorities like food for the hungry, medicine for the sick, education and skills, clean water and sanitation, and questions of life and death and what lies beyond. In fact, these priorities are seen as all of a piece. If there are to be transformed lives, then to set those lives in a transformed society is just as much a priority. They achieve these changes by a patient and caring investment in human well-being, by a transformational attitude to personal development through education and skills, and the valuing of each person as unique in dignity and in worth.
My name is Moses Vattipalli. I work with Operation Mercy Charitable Company. I monitor and organize some of the economic development projects for the Dalits. Some of the projects to help poor Dalit families. We have given some cycles, rickshaws, where they uses the cycle in order to get their livelihood. And this rickshaw actually gives a livelihood for 5 members in the family. And if this rickshaw is not there with him, if this help is not there from OMCC, I think these people would starve.
I'm here with Devadas, our self-help group worker, who takes care of 20 self-help groups that have been started in Udamari and its neighboring villages. Devdas was just telling me how some of the women from these groups have now started their own businesses, including basket weaving and general stores where they sell provisions. Dalit women have been empowered greatly from these self-help groups and are now able to take care of their families better. We're at Ashok's home. Ashok benefited from OMCC's microfinancing initiative. OMCC gave him a loan of 15,000 rupees, which helped him buy scales and utensils, which he trades for scrap. He takes this scrap into the city and sells it for a much higher rate, which helps him support his family even though he's physically challenged. Ashok is very grateful to the OMCC and its microfinancing initiative. This computer center is a novelty in the Utamari village and its neighboring villages. It's training young adults in basic computer skills so they can find better jobs. You will not imagine the opportunities of economic empowerment that have opened for the nearly 200 graduates from this center. Some have even found jobs at the cashier counter in a chain of supermarkets in the city.
As far as employment goes, to become a seamstress, to get a bike for deliveries, to sell scrap metal, or even to land a job as a supermarket cashier, to Western ears this can sound ordinary and unremarkable. Yet for Dalits, all these activities represent a quantum leap of opportunity and financial prospects. There are times when we may need a reminder about what we are seeing. So for instance, to watch these people now is to observe them through a window of centuries of deprivation. They are still outcast. Only a few gain education. Labour prospects are pitifully limited, and most Dalits continue to embrace disgusting and menial tasks which the rest of society shuns.
Dalits are a major section of the society, and they have understood we have the power to change. In many things, for instance, those who invest here, and if in their investments, for instance, today there's talk of giving the Dalits affirmative quota in the private sector. And if they could adopt on their own voluntary without the law imposing it on them, it will become a big pressure point. Immediately that will, okay, when some industry can take it, why not the rest of it? I think this one simple act can be a catalyst.
VP Singh was Prime Minister for less than a year. Yet many believe his courage profoundly changed the prospects for India's poor and oppressed. It was his implementation of the controversial Mandal Report which many believe set the stage for India's new beginnings. The report advocated the reservation of jobs and places in education for a large section of the poorest in society, known as the OBCs, the other backward classes, who, like the Dalits, are extremely poor. Yet nationwide, the reaction was extraordinary, with riots and other protests, and reports that upper caste students even burnt themselves to death. Such was the temperature of right-wing extremism that eventually VP Singh was forced out of office. But today, many recognize that by his bravery and commitment, a slow social fuse was lit, which has never been extinguished. During the making of this film, and after a long battle with cancer, at the age of 77, Sadly, VP Singh died. But after he left office, and for the rest of his life, he never wavered in his advocacy of India's oppressed. Against all criticism, he advocated reserved places for Dalits, not just in government, but private enterprise too. That social fuse burns ever brighter as a new generation has taken up the cause of Dalit liberation. One of its most powerful advocates is Dr. Joseph D'Souza, International President of the Dalit Freedom Network.
The OMCC philosophy is primarily a full response to the Dalit cry for freedom. This time round, when the Dalits came and asked of us and Indian society and leaders that we want freedom, we want transformation, they were not asking for some kind of a piecemeal, pick and choose transformation. No, they realized that many things in their lives have to change, many things in their communities have to change, many things in their society have to change. So they are asking for holistic, complete transformation that includes education, that includes social transformation, that includes their healthcare, their economics, it includes their spiritual well-being, and their development as a people in every realm. You know, the Dalit art has been crushed for 3,000 years. They want that to be restored. Dalit artistic expression has never found its way to mainstream media. They want that to be seen. One of the huge encouragements is the rising consciousness both within India, outside India, about the Dalit issue, the Dalit problem. You know, 10 years ago, if you had gone to many forums in the world, the word Dalit was not even known. The other huge encouragement for me is the Dalit children I see across the nation, over 15,000 of them, and many more thousands coming, and their lives being changed. Next year, in fact, is our first graduation of the Dalit children who will finish class 10, and I've been talking to some of them, and I'm just completely overwhelmed. I was just talking to one of our girls who lives in the Pipe Village, which has been filmed before, and these are people living in the pipes, and she's going to graduate next year. She speaks great English, and she has a dream, she has an ambition, she wants to be a doctor. I'm committed to see that she becomes a doctor. So this freedom that we have brought, and a whole new generation who have not been tampered with by caste discrimination and caste ideology, is a huge encouragement to me. And then, of course, when I go into the communities and I see the larger impact in terms of economic development, what's happening in terms of medical work, what's happening in terms of even their spiritual well-being, it really, really is an encouragement. I have a deep sense of satisfaction that the last decade has been well spent, not only in terms of where I have given my life to, but all of my partners and the global community that has partnered with us for the Dalit movement. I have no doubt in my mind now, with the involvement of all of these years across the country and understanding Indian society, that the caste system is the curse of India. It explains the many paradoxes of India. It explains, for example, the paradox of rich people staying in first-class houses and buildings in cities like Bombay, Hyderabad, New Delhi, and then dumping all of their dirt and rubbish and waste just outside from the window in a dung heap. Why don't they take care of their own dirt and clean it? It's because cleaning dirt is a low job. Cleaning dirt is the job only an untouchable can do. Many things can be explained in India when you understand the curse of the caste system. I know, and I have no doubt, that caste upheaval, which has been going on since the late mid-90s, is going to increase. The caste tensions will increase, and finally both the oppressed and the oppressive caste will have to lay the system aside, because there's no future for India without all Indians being equal and not belonging to this caste or that caste. Upper caste students struggle when they find out that the Supreme Court itself has now passed a ruling that in the institutes of higher learning, the backward caste have to be given reserved seats. The upper caste students cannot understand why the Supreme Court is doing this. The Supreme Court is doing this because India is an unequal society, and they're upset because they're not getting the seats, because there are not enough seats. Then they see seats are being given to the backward and Dalit caste, and they think it's unfair. Well, the caste system itself is unfair, and these upper caste students are now beginning to ask, why have we not been told? Urban India has been protected from dealing with the reality of this thing. Indians overseas, who largely are upper caste, educated Indians who have gone overseas, they have been protected from this reality. And to answer the question, will caste discrimination and caste system itself will be consigned to the dung heap of history? I believe it will, yes. There's no future otherwise.
There is an old Indian saying, "To watch us dance is to hear our hearts speak." These boys performing a modern Dalit dance come from the same villages and slums already seen in this film. Lifted up from hopelessness and poverty, all of them have received support and education through the OMCC. They, like many of the others that we've met, have a new energy of hope and opportunity, for centuries denied them as the most despised in Indian society. So though relatively small scale, these are significant new beginnings. As for the future, to bring the Dalits lasting freedom is one of the most difficult and urgent tasks facing not only India, but the whole international community. Our world must listen to the Dalit cry for freedom. Watch them dance, to hear their hearts speak.